Welcome to the deep dive. We're here again to stack up the research on, well, a really complex topic and pull out those surprising, often critical insights you should probably know about.
That's right.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into something that's, incredibly close to all of us, but maybe the thing we overlook the most fundamentally. The amazing, complex, and sometimes downright bizarre mechanics of the human body.
Absolutely. Our sources today, they treat the body less like just biology and more like the ultimate self-regulating machine.
Okay.
And our mission really is to pull out the facts that show the sheer scale of what's happening inside you right now. Think trillions of cells dividing, proteins folding just right, signals firing.
Yeah, our researchers, they actually struggled to even quantify the number of unconscious tasks. They were throwing out these massive, almost impossible numbers like a vigintillion or non-million.
Right, numbers that barely mean anything.
Exactly. The point is, the complexity is, well, it's literally unquantifiable. You're just existing inside this warm wobble of flesh, as one source put it, doing all this stuff without any conscious input.
Mm-hmm. And if you need a really fascinating opener just to grasp that unconscious scale, just think about blinking, simple blinking.
Okay.
You probably do it, about 14,000 times a day?
14,000. So if you do the math, hang on, that means your eyes are actually shut for 23 minutes of every single waking day.
23 minutes, yeah.
Wow. That's nearly half an hour of just intentional darkness.
Yeah.
Managed by systems you never even think about.
It's a pretty spectacular achievement in automatic engineering, really.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. Let's start with the infrastructure, the stuff that keeps us running.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the body's material science, the design is just phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about materials that engineers today can only dream of copying.
Like what?
Well, take cartilage, for instance, the stuff lining your joints. You might think it's kind of rough or just solid, but the research, it shows it's many times smoother than polished glass.
Smoother than glass, seriously.
Yeah, and what's really astonishing is its friction coefficient.
Okay.
That friction coefficient is 5 times less than ice.
Wait, 5 times less friction than ice. Let that sink in for a second.
You'd literally slide faster on your own cartilage than on an ice rink.
Huh.
But here's the kicker. Unlike ice, it's not brittle. It doesn't crack or shatter when you run or jump.
Right.
You grew that yourself, and it allows for decades of movement. That's a level of tech we just haven't matched.
And thinking about blueprints, maybe we should take a moment to just, be humbled by how ancient our own blueprint is.
Mm-hmm.
DNA,
Mm-hmm.
the genes you carry are, immensely ancient, maybe eternal in their purpose. For you to even exist right now, you have to appreciate that your personal line of descent hasn't been broken for, 3 billion years?
3 billion years of successful replication, successful survival. Just think about that chain of success. Every single ancestor managed to pass the baton before, age or a predator or just bad luck got them.
It's hard not to feel kind of small thinking about that lineage.
Definitely.
So given that, ancient, seemingly flawless success rate, how do we explain the basic design flaws we see now? If the blueprint is so tough, why are our core engines, like the heart, so vulnerable?
Well, that's the paradox, isn't it? The human design. What's fascinating is the sheer power, the work rate of the heart.
Okay.
It beats about 100,000 times a day over a lifetime, maybe 3.5 billion times.
It's moving serious weight, right? We're talking about pushing 70 gallons of blood every hour.
Every hour. Yeah, that's 1,680 gallons a day.
Wow.
And the force from that pump is just staggering. If the aorta, the main artery, gets compromised, that pressure can send blood spurting up to 3 meters, like 9 feet.
It's actually a miracle most hearts last as long as they do. But that strength also kind of highlights a really fundamental, frustrating flaw in our design. We can't replace damaged heart muscle.
Exactly. And this is where you really need to distinguish between a heart attack and cardiac arrest. They sound similar, but they're different problems.
Right. A heart attack is a blockage.
It's a blockage. It cuts off oxygen to the muscle. And when that muscle dies, it's gone forever, replaced by a useless scar tissue.
Which is, as the sources point out, really galling because simpler creatures like, zebrafish?
Yeah, the humble zebrafish, they can easily regrow damaged heart tissue. We lost that ability somewhere along the line.
Huh. And cardiac arrest.
That's usually an electrical failure. The pump itself just stops working. Different mechanism entirely.
Okay. And digging down into the stuff the heart's actually moving around, let's talk red blood cells, RBCs. They're described as these exquisitely designed little shipping containers.
That's a great way to put it. To maximize the space for their cargo, that's hemoglobin carrying oxygen RBCs, basically throw out almost everything that makes a normal cell a cell.
Like the nucleus, the DNA.
Yep, the nucleus, DNA, even the mitochondria, the power plants. They just become these tiny, dedicated bags for transport.
But here's the big design paradox, right?
Yeah.
They're built to deliver oxygen everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't use any of the oxygen they carry.
Correct. They have to run on glucose, on sugar for their own energy because they tossed out the mitochondria, the bits that actually use oxygen.
So they fuel themselves purely on sugar just to complete their delivery route. That's quite a workaround.
It is, which kind of leads us to the microscopic war happening inside us all the time. If we connect this efficiency idea to the bigger picture, it makes you ask, how do we manage all the infections, the biological threats we face constantly?
We always focus on oxygen, but you mentioned 80% of the air we breathe is actually nitrogen, which we can't use directly.
Right. And that nitrogen is totally useless to us until bacteria, tiny microbes, convert it into usable forms like ammonia.
Which we need for proteins, DNA.
Exactly. Building blocks of life. Without that invisible workforce of microbes out there doing the conversion, we fundamentally couldn't exist. We depend on them.
And speaking of the invisible world, we are just swimming in viruses. Research showed a quart of seawater has up to 100 billion viruses.
Like 100 billion. And maybe even more surprising is what biologists found in healthy human lungs, a place we used to think was pretty clean.
Yeah.
The average healthy person, they're carrying around 174 different species of virus just in their lungs. And 90% of those were completely new to science.
Wow. So Earth is basically an ocean of microbes, and we're just floating in it.
Pretty much.
Okay, that context makes discovering antibiotics even more vital. But looking at the Fleming story, the penicillin story, the popular version often makes it sound like this miracle find because the molds was rare.
Yeah, the sources clarify that part's mostly a later journalistic spin to make the story more dramatic.
Okay. That mold, Penicillium notatum, it was actually really common in London labs at the time. So Fleming absolutely deserves huge credit for seeing its importance when it contaminated his dish and for reporting it in 1929. But it wasn't some 1 in a million fluke.
Right. And he was also busy with other stuff like lysozyme.
Exactly. He discovered lysozyme, that natural antimicrobial enzyme in our tears and saliva, 6 years earlier in 1923. He was clearly onto something with germ killers.
But the way we've used, or maybe overused, this amazing discovery has led us straight into this terrifying problem of antimicrobial resistance. And here's where we need to be impartial and just report what the data shows about a huge factor: economics versus public health.
Yeah, the data indicates that in the U.S., something like 80% of all antibiotics are actually fed to farm animals.
80%.
And often it's not even to treat infections, it's just to make them grow faster, fatter.
Which is a practice that was banned in Sweden way back in 1986, and the whole EU banned it in 1999, right? Specifically because they saw this resistance threat coming.
Precise. That statistic is, well, it's pretty sobering. It really shows how badly food production efficiency can clash with human health needs. And this reliance is pushing us towards forecasts of, 10 million preventable deaths a year from resistance within 30 years.
That's the projection, which makes finding alternatives incredibly urgent.
So what are the options?
Well, one interesting idea is something called quorum sensing drugs.
Quorum sensing?
Yeah, the idea is these drugs wouldn't kill the bacteria directly. Instead, they'd stop the bacteria from signaling to each other to mount a coordinated attack.
Oh, so it's like preventing a mob from forming. The bacteria are there, but they can't reach that critical mass the quorum needed to launch a full-scale assault on your body.
Exactly. It sort of disarms them without wiping them out entirely, which might be better for our overall microbiome.
Okay, that's clever. What else?
Another really promising area is bacteriophages. Phages, for short.
Which are viruses, using viruses to fight bacteria.
That's right. They're actually the most abundant biological things on Earth, and they're hyper-specialized. Each type of phage targets and hunts only one specific type of bacterium.
So instead of a broad-spectrum antibiotic that kills everything, good and bad.
You could use a specific phage to target just the bad bacteria causing the infection. You'd need to identify the culprit first, of course.
But it's a beautifully targeted approach. Yeah. Like sending in a microscopic assassin.
Pretty much. And it leaves the rest of your essential gut bacteria, your nitrogen fixers, all that good stuff, completely untouched.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The brain, our most complex, maybe most vulnerable organ. you were saying the brain literally manufactures our reality.
It really does. In a way, it's constantly tricking you, but for your own good.
How so?
Well, think about lightning and thunder. You see the flash, then hear the bang, right? Because light travels much faster than sound.
Yep.
But your brain smooths out that tiny difference in arrival time. It processes the input so you perceive them as happening simultaneously. It actively constructs your sensory reality.
Photons don't actually have color, and sound waves don't have sound.
Not inherently, no. Photons are just electromagnetic radiation of certain wavelengths. Sound waves are just pressure variations in the air. Your brain interprets those raw signals and creates the experience of color and sound internally.
Huh, that's kind of reality bending.
It is. And memory is just as selective. Your brain is picky about what it keeps. We talk about working memory, that's for short-term stuff, holding things in mind for maybe half a minute max. Then there's long-term memory.
Right.
But there's also this thing called recognition memory,
Right.
which explains why you might struggle to recall the exact plot details of a book you read years ago.
Yeah.
But you can instantly remember the color of the cover or the font inside, or maybe even the specific library shelf where you found it.
Okay, yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
So it remembers where to find the details without cluttering itself up in the details themselves.
Precisely. It's an efficient filing system, not a data dump.
Sadly, though, for centuries, the brain was also the site of just profound ignorance and stigma, despite its complexity. Take epilepsy.
Mm-hmm.
For most of history, people with epilepsy were shunned, even demonized. The sources point out that as recently as 1956, it was actually illegal in 17 U.S. states for someone with epilepsy to marry.
1956. It's sobering. One source put it really starkly. The history of epilepsy is like 4,000 years of ignorance, superstition, and stigma, followed by about 100 years of knowledge, superstition, and stigma. We're only just now, relatively speaking, starting to consistently treat it as a physiological issue, not some kind of moral failing.
Okay, moving from the brain back to the body overall, let's talk about this mismatch between our ancient evolutionary design and, well, modern life, especially modern abundance. We're powerful survival machines, but maybe built for the wrong environment now.
That's a perfect way to put it. Our bodies evolved for dietary paucity, the feast or famine cycle that was normal for millennia.
Right.
So there's basically nothing chemical in your body designed to tell you to stop eating when food is plentiful, including the hormone leptin, which people often think is a fullness signal.
It's not.
Not primarily. Leptin's real job seems to be signaling whether you have enough stored energy reserves, enough body fat to take on really challenging biological tasks.
Like pregnancy or puberty.
Exactly. Big energy investments. It's more of a go-no-go signal for those things, based on stored fuel.
And the consequence of our modern energy-rich diets is pretty startling then. You mentioned puberty starts way earlier now.
Years earlier. Commonly around age 11 today, compared to maybe 16 or 17 back in Henry VIII's time. Better nutrition means the go signal for puberty arrives much sooner.
So our ancestors' incredibly useful ability to store fat efficiently as this crucial backup fuel that's often working against us now in a world of plenty.
It often is, yeah. Which leads us straight into some of the great paradoxes of modern health and medicine. Like, take the salt debate. It's confusing.
Very confusing. The WHO suggests, no more than 2,000 milligrams of sodium a day.
Right. But the research isn't quite that simple. There's a huge meta-analysis looked at 133,000 people.
Okay.
It found a link between high salt intake and heart problems, but only in people who already had high blood pressure.
Only in them.
Yeah. And maybe more surprisingly, that same study found that low salt intake, less than 3,000 milligrams a day, actually increased heart risk for both healthy people and those with hypertension.
So, less isn't always better. That goes against a lot of standard advice.
It does suggest the relationship is more complex than just less is always good. Maybe there's a sweet spot.
Okay. And this confusion about what's optimal is made worse by the just colossal cost of healthcare, especially in the U.S. So this is really relevant to anyone listening. The price differences are stark.
They really are. An MRI scan costs, on average, $1,121 in the U.S. That's 4 times more than the same scan in the Netherlands.
4 times. And for simpler things, an angiogram.
Costs $914 in the U.S. versus just $35 in Canada.
$35. It just hammers home the point that spending more doesn't automatically mean better medicine or better outcomes. And those costs directly hit people's wallets.
Absolutely. And finally, there's this other maybe grim paradox that comes from modern medicine's success in extending life, the high cost of dying. We spend billions fighting diseases, but the actual return on overall life expectancy can be surprisingly surprisingly small.
Yeah, I saw the figures. If we cured all cancers tomorrow,
Right.
wipe them out completely, it would only add about 3.2 years to the average life expectancy.
That's right. Because, sadly, people who die from cancer are often older already. If cancer doesn't get them, something else likely will relatively soon.
And Alzheimer's. If we eliminated that entirely,
It would add just 19 days to the average lifespan.
19 days.
Yeah.
It puts those massive research efforts into a different perspective, doesn't it? Not that they aren't worthwhile, but the impact on overall lifespan is limited.
It highlights the biological certainty of aging itself.
And women are reminded of that certainty by menopause, which is actually kind of unique, isn't it? Humans are the only primates that go through menopause.
Pretty much the only ones. And we're one of the very few animals overall, along with maybe some sheep, certain whales, where females spend a large chunk of their lives, maybe a third, in a post-reproductive state.
That's a real evolutionary puzzle we haven't totally solved. Why keep females alive long after they can reproduce? Grandparenting, maybe?
Yeah.
Passing on knowledge?
Those are the leading theories, yeah. But it's still debated.
And speaking of reproduction, we have to mention maybe the most profound design flaw, or at least design compromise, in the whole human body.
Yeah.
The birth paradox.
Ah, yes. Human childbirth. It's incredibly challenging because of something called cephalopelvic disproportion.
Which basically means
Basically, the baby's head is about an inch too big to pass smoothly through the mother's pelvis.
an inch too big.
Yep. Requiring the baby to perform this.
Right.
Well, the sources call it an absurdly challenging 90-degree turn as it navigates the birth canal.
That really challenges the idea of intelligent design, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It seems like a dangerous, difficult process for both mother and child. A clear trade-off made when we evolved to walk upright, which narrowed the pelvis.
There's a major evolutionary compromise, absolutely.
So, okay, what does this all mean? We've taken this journey through the body, seen it as this marvel of engineering, a hotbed of viruses, a system kind of riddled with these quirky, sometimes dangerous design compromises from our deep past.
Yeah, the journey really shows a machine that's both exquisitely designed in some ways and yet deeply flawed by the constraints of its evolutionary history.
But what's the final takeaway?
Well, despite all these vulnerabilities, all the diseases and flaws we've talked about, the human body is fundamentally designed for survival. We are profoundly robust.
How so?
Take gravity, for instance. A child who's half your height falls and hits their head. They experience only 1/32 of the impact force that a full-grown adult would feel from the same height fall. Smaller scale helps.
Huh. And we're designed not to die easily, right? It's actually quite hard to kill yourself.
It really is. The research notes, for example, that cutting your wrist is surprisingly difficult because the major arteries aren't right at the surface. They're protected deeper down by this tough layer of tissue called a fascial sheath. The body is wired to resist self-destruction.
Okay.
But, and here's the ultimate paradox, maybe, we are all aging. We must eventually slow down. We're designed to survive incredible challenges, yet movement, the very thing we often take for granted, for health, for pleasure, that ability is finite.
We evolved to store fat and rest when we could.
Right. But our modern world demands we do the opposite, stay active, manage our weight. We have to consciously fight our own evolutionary programming.
So if you take one lesson away from this deep dive today, maybe it's this. Appreciate that movement. Enjoy it while you still can. Because at some point, this robust, amazing, incredibly flawed machine of yours will inevitably slow down and stop.
Well said.
We really encourage you to keep exploring the incredible sources behind this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.